box, and I'll answer it right there. So this is the front page. From here, you can do a number of things. I was going to walk you through interactive data views, which is one way into the system. An interactive data view is a sort of put together aggregation of time series data from different, that a scientist has put together to demonstrate some of the capabilities and maybe a particular phenomena at one of the arrays. And there are 4 of those available. Those can also be created on the fly, which I can walk through a little later. And then data access, and this is just how to find and look at data within the system, as well as download and different things you can do along those lines. So the top toolbar up here remains present throughout no matter where you are on the site. So you have home, access array data, data views, download, settings, share, help, and feedback. So those buttons will always be there. From the front page, there's sort of a quick way to access, go to data access or interactive data views. So that's where I'll start. Really quick, if you want to follow along, you can do so at Data Explorer. Sorry, let me make sure I read it correctly. dataexplorer.oceanobservatories.org. Okay, so by clicking on interactive data views, we scroll down the front page and we see the 4 data views that are available. So there's a data view that features data from Global Argentine Basin, Coastal Endurance, Coastal Pioneer, and the Regional Cabled Array. So I'm just going to click on this first one, Global Argentine Basin. And at the top, you can see there's a description of what's going on, a couple images taken from around when the event occurred. This is a blowdown event due to some currents. And I didn't create this data view. Craig Rissian at OSU created it, so he knows more about it. But you can read through this. You can get some context. Here under related data, you can click to get to related data within the system. And then there's an animation on the right side that shows sort of what was happening at a broader level. And then if you scroll down, you can see actual data from the system. So these are interactive plots. These are examples of charts that are available within the system. So these, you can hover over these to get learn more information about a particular time period. You can expand the time slider. You can drag to zoom in or use the time slider to zoom in. And the same is true for these curtain plots on the right side, these heat maps. I could zoom in on a particular area. And you can see that, let's see, I'm going to expand this back out a little bit. During the highlighted time period, the depth of the instrument, that pressure increased, so it went underwater and came back up. And so that's illustrated using these different time series. So these all lead into different parts of the system. So you can, if this is a particular thing that you're interested in, you can click on a chart title to get to a full page display of just that time series. You can see more context by clicking on the array, the subsite label. So if I were to do that, I can, this is where that particular instrument, this is a map of where that particular instrument is in the ocean. If I zoom out, I can see that it's off the coast of South America. And then this global view shows me where in the world we are. So that's data views. I can iterate through these. I can cycle through these just by clicking on them in the data views button that's available on all pages. So I can look at the axial seamount volcano forecasting. Again, I get a description, an animation that describes the area, some photos, and then again, these time series. All right, I'm going to go back to the front page. So the second way into data is to look at data access. And this is the main way to navigate the site. So you can either click on data access here at the top, or at the very top, this button is available on every page, access array data. Gets me the same thing. So I'm going to click on data access. And so I get a map and a list of the sites of each of the arrays. This map is interactive. I can, pan it around by grabbing it. I can hover over a point and it highlights on the left side which array I'm looking at. So right now I'm looking at North Atlantic Global Irminger Sea. If I click on it, it highlights that particular array. And then, I don't know if you could see, but down below, the number of platform types, instruments, and parameters updated. So now I can choose from platform types, instrument types, and parameters that are available only at that array. And so there are quite a few. But if I'm just interested in learning more about that array, I can hit go. And at this point, I'm taken to this introduction page. Again, it's a map of what this particular array. We're looking at the Pioneer array. And on the left side are available platforms. If I hover over these, the platform that I'm hovering over is highlighted in yellow on the map. So you can see that as I move through, the yellow dot moves around. And then on the right side, the depth range for that particular platform is highlighted. I can do the same thing over the map and get a name, or over the depth plots. I can click on any of these to dive in and get more information about that particular platform. But I'm going to keep it at the array level. You can see at the top there are a number of tabs here. So more information gives me more textual information and a graphic. So this is a diagram of the array. I can learn more about it. I can read all about it. These links at the bottom link back into the main OOI website, where I can learn more about the themes. The other tabs here basically create a different way of slicing the data. So I'm actually going to start on the right side. So platform types. So at this point, I'm looking at actual data, and this view is by platform type. So the platform types that are available at the Pioneer array are fixed depth assets, gliders, moorings, near surface platforms, profiling assets, and seaform platforms. So as I click on each of these, you can see that the grid updates. And now I'm seeing only moorings, near surface platforms, profiling assets, etc. And I had previously filtered on nitrogen during a previous session. So I'm going to clear that up by clicking on the X here. And so now I can see all profiling assets at the Pioneer array. And again, as I hover over each of these time series, you can see on the left side, the map highlights, there's a yellow dot that highlights where on the map I am. And then in the depth plot just next to it, I can see what depth range we're looking at. So these are interactive, so I can hover to get profiles for each, for a time period. And right now we're looking at weekly data. I can filter on time. So if I turn on the time slider, I can start to filter all of these down to the same time period. So if I were interested in a particular event or something, I could filter to that. At this point, if I were to click on downloads, I could download just the time period that I'm looking at or create a chart within URDAP. So I'll just quickly show that this is what URDAP looks like. This is a merged time series. So this is all data across all deployments for this particular instrument. I should say it's not all deployments. Oftentimes there are simultaneous streams coming from a deployment, and we've tried to select the best one. So this is sort of an aggregation of what we consider to be the best data. In a minute, we'll get to the part where we can see all of the raw data. So you can get to all deployment data. So to learn more about each, any particular time series, I can click on it. And this takes me to, right now we're looking at real-time data because real-time data is available. Real-time being the last week or so. And I can expand this out with one click by clicking the expand axes bounds. And then I'm going to see the full time period. So this is similar to the chart we were looking at on the previous page. So just to sort of work my way down the page, at the top, I can choose chart type. So right now we're looking at a curtain plot. This is all depths and all time. If I choose time series, I'm going to get a time series per depth. So I'll get a list of depths available, and then I can choose one and get a time series. And I'll pull that up in a minute. Auto scale color axis, I'm going to leave that because that's kind of nice to have the color axis auto scaled for me. Time bin, so I can change my time bin. At this time period selected, I couldn't select all, but I could probably select hours or weeks. If I selected hours, it would take a little while to load up, but I'd get a higher resolution plot. If I leave it at auto, as I zoom in, I'll get new time bins selected for me. So the different ways to zoom in are to drag. I'm just left clicking and dragging over a particular area, and I'm automatically zoomed in. And so now I'm looking at daily data. And this looks a little bit pixelated to me, so I'm going to switch this to hours. It's reselecting, and I'm going to get a new plot. Again, I can hover, and I can get a profile. I'm going to switch that back to auto and zoom back out. So as I was zooming in, I don't know if you noticed that there are some little bars along the bottom. These are provenance. So these indicate where we pulled this best time series, this section of our what we consider the best time series from. So in this case, it's deployment 1 recovered 6-second resolution. And then there's an exact location where it was deployed. I can also hover over the next one. This says deployment 2 recovered, etc. If I want more information, I can click, and I can actually get to the raw data that corresponds to that time series via threads catalog or ERDAP dataset. I should mention, you can also add this to a download queue, and that just gives me a list of things that I want to download that I can access later. So instead of downloading as I go, I can create this queue that later on lets me download things.
Brian, how long do downloads typically take? Because there's so much data that you're accessing at once. Do you have an average?
Well, it depends on what you're downloading. If you're looking at the merged time series, the highest resolution you can get for that is 1 minute data. So this is if I look at this particular deployment, this is 6-second data. So we're bending that down to 1 minute data. So it's a lot faster. I could download this whole data set fairly quickly, probably 20 or 30 seconds.
Wow.
If I'm looking at the raw data, 6-second data, then it can take quite a bit longer. And there are certain, I think that we've resolved any issues with downloading all data, but if you were to select all data, you're downloading quite a bit of data, and that could take a while. It would also take a fair amount of bandwidth on your internet connection. Yeah. Okay, so that's provenance. And so as I was mentioning, as I zoom in, this remains lined up with my data. So you can see that that's scooching over as the data scooches over. Below that, we get annotations. So any annotations that are available for this data set show up. So here there's a note that says deployment 3 due to a clock rollover issue, et cetera, et cetera. So here there could be quality control, notes about quality control, anything that a human has entered. And these are categorized. So oftentimes there are 3 or 4 categories of annotation. And these are all, you can expand these out to get a full description and so on. Then finally, we get deployments. So this shows all deployments. And here you can see that for each deployment number, there are 2 actual deployments. So if I hover, I can see that for deployment 1, there's telemetered and recovered. And so from here, I could click, see this description, and get a download of telemetered data. Moving down a little further, we get a legend and downloads again. This goes back to the full merged time series, similar to what we looked at in the grid, and then some more information at the bottom. Along the top, there's a more information tab. This is similar to what we saw on the array page. In this case, there's detailed instrumentation information, data products, several links back into the main OOI website with further information, processing steps, etc. So this is where you can really get in-depth information about how the data is being collected, and an image, and then an annotation list. So this is, rather than seeing this as a time series, I can get the annotations in a table, and it's downloadable. This is taking a minute to work right now. So here we can see we've got several deployments and then the one note that we saw about the clock rollover issue. Those are all considered annotations. There's a download button here. I can download this actual table as a CSV if I want to look at it in a different system or something like that. If I click on all downloads, at the top, again, I'll get this merge time series. So here we call it the full time series. So I could jump straight into ERDAP or just grab the CSV for this full time series. And then again, each deployment and each method, deployment method, so recovered and telemetered in this case, there's a download line for each one. And so I can jump into ERDAP or threads to get the full data set. Navigation-wise, at the top, I get a breadcrumb that tells me how I've gotten to where I am. So where in the system we are. So this is the Coastal Pioneer Array, the Inshore Profiler mooring platform, and then what we call a node, the wire following profiler 3-wavelength fluorometer. So if I wanted to jump out to see nearby or other parameters collected at this location, I can click on wire following profiler. And so we've pre-selected the 3-wavelength fluorometer here, but you can see that there's other instrumentation also available. So if I were to click on CTD, I can get CTD data from this location. And I didn't check this ahead of time, but I'm hoping we have some quality control data available at one of these locations. Okay, I think I'm gonna have to go to a different location. So this is a good opportunity to look at different ways to jump into other parts of the system. So from this breadcrumb, I can jump into a different array. So I can see the whole list of arrays here, or I could jump into a different platform within the Coastal Pioneer array. But I can also just use the Access Array Data button at the top. And this should be familiar from the front page. I get the all arrays. Again, I can click on an array. You can see that the number of platform types, instrument types, and parameters updates. So now I'm looking at the regional cabled array off the coast of Washington and Oregon. And I believe we have some good quality control data for CTD for profiling assets. So in this case, I have a good idea what I want, and I'm telling the system I want to look at profiling assets at this CTD. So when I get there, I'm not gonna have to navigate to that page. It's just gonna send me straight to a nice page full of data right away. So this is a nice thing for users who are coming back to the system. And let's say I'm interested in salinity. Okay, so I'm interested in this particular plot for whatever reason. So I click on it. And in this case, we do get some quality control data. So that's this sort of histogram at the bottom. And you can see there's a little key at the bottom that says green is pass. The height of the histogram indicates how many measurements were taken during that time period. So right now we're looking at hourly data, and you can see that as I hover under Quartod, it says pass. There were 240 passing time periods. If I zoom out, let's see, I'll use the full zoom button. So you can see the histogram remains. And so maybe I'm interested in why we have a lot less data here. So I can zoom in. So quality control, everything's passing, but if I were to open up annotations, I can hover here and get an explanation for what's going on. I'm going to zoom out a little more just to show what it looks like if there's suspect data. There we go. So there's a little, you can see a little bit of orange right here during this time period. I'll zoom in here. And you can see that there's some suspect data here. And just hovering over that, it looks a lot darker. So those are lower values than everything around it. So those were flagged as suspect. If I were to go into ERDAP, I could get the actual flag values for those, basically the reason why they were flagged as suspect.
Brian, if all the data that's coming in is quality controlled at some level, correct?
Well, in this case, so this is Quartod. So that's a particular sort of system for quality controlling data. And that has not been run on all the data. That's being done by the OOI data team. And I believe they're selectively doing it with the plan to, this isn't, I'm not the best person to answer this question, I should say, but I believe the plan is for all data eventually to get quality control.
Yeah, it's a huge task.
Yeah. And there is a difference between, so here you can see QC result under annotations. So this particular chunk of data was flagged as automatically flagged as questionable, but then there's also a QC result that says data values are within plausible ranges, but lower than the usual L0 conductivity. So I believe one of the tasks is to integrate the two systems. So the manual QC results. So everything does, I believe every time series, somebody looks at it and manually does some QC, but that's not integrated with this histogram up here. Those are sort of two different systems. But my understanding is that there's a future plan to integrate the two.
Great, thanks.
Okay, so that is sort of finding and searching data. One other data type, sort of exotic data type that, one other thing I was going to demonstrate. So right now we're looking at a depth plot. I'm going to expand this out. This is something I missed on the earlier plot that we looked at. Under chart, there's curtain plot and there's time series. Okay, so now this is pretty sparse data. We're looking at depth 1 meter, and I get depths, whoops, I don't know if you can see this, but I get depths all the way down to 193 meters. So there isn't a ton of data right at 1 meter because that's sort of the top of the profiler. But if I were to select something in the middle, say 55 meters, should get a nice time series. So this is just data for the 55 meter depth. And again, I can zoom in by dragging, I can rebin, I can manually choose my bin, I can hover, etc. I can zoom back out. Okay. So one other data type that we haven't looked at is glider data. This is visualizing glider data is new to the Data Explorer. This wasn't available on OOI.net. There are a few different ways to get there. If I'm interested in glider data at a particular array, let's say coastal endurance, I can just select it under, so I've selected coastal endurance as a location, and then I can select gliders under platform types. So in this case, I just get a text intro. It's just telling me which deployment I'm looking at, and then I can see a list of different deployments. So we're not previewing the data. That's something that we're hoping to do. But if I am interested in a visualization, I can choose one of these deployments. And I should say, I can also select a particular parameter to look at. So I've selected salinity, but I could also select oxygen saturation. And then I can click on a deployment and it will load up. This one will take a minute. It's a fairly big data set, I think. While it's loading up, I'll describe what you're going to see. So I get a little progress bar at the top that's just telling me stuff is happening, it's being downloaded. In the upper left, I'm gonna get a map. That's a top-down view, just a regular geographical map. I'll get a curtain plot in the upper right, similar to what we were looking at with the wire following profiler and the CTD that we just looked at. And then below that, I'm gonna get a 3D plot. And that's where I can zoom in and see the bathymetry below it. There is a downloads button in the upper right where I can grab data from ERDAP. And then there's more information in the lower left, more metadata information. Okay, so each of these pieces is fully interactive. So I can zoom in, I can pan around, and they all sync up. So if I were to filter to a particular depth, each of the other plots is going to update. I don't know if you can see, they're both updating right now. If I hover, I can get profiles along the track, and Here, I'm going to change my color palette really quick to something a little nicer. Okay, so as I hover, the red dot on the top-down map on the left moves around. That's showing me where my mouse is in space, top-down. And then below, just below the curtain plot, there's a little red bar that's moving around as I move my mouse. And that's showing me where in the 3D plot I am. I can rotate the 3D plot. I can pan it using right-click, or I can just hit this auto rotate button and it'll spin around. The gray on the bottom is the bathymetry for that particular area. I can change my selected parameter. So now we're looking at optical backscatter, par. Just gonna bring up temperature. It's dumb. Anyways, I can look at all the different variables. There are some basic interpolation methods I can use. And so on. Okay, so that's gliders. Any questions so far? Okay, so the last thing I'll run through is data views. So data views are, again, there are the pre-created data views. That's these guys that are available from the front page. These are sort of polished, meant for sharing, meant for a wide audience. They give a full description of what's going on. Data views can also be used to create your own comparison plot or look at data that from different regions or different parameters that you want to compare. And then these can be shared with colleagues or students or whatever. And you can come back to them later. So you can save a link and come back later. So I'll go into Global Station Papa. And anytime I'm looking at data, so this time I'll look by parameter, I get this little blue star. And if I hover over it, it says add or remove this data set from data views. And if I click on it, I can create a new data view. Everybody will get a data view called default. So if you were to click on this and you hadn't been to the site before, you would get a data view called default. And you could add this data set to that data view just by clicking on the checkbox. So now I have 2 on my default data view. I'm just going to add a new one called Fall AGU Demo. And then I can click on that. As soon as I click on it, I get another checkbox that says add to compare chart. I'm going to hold off on that for now. But let's say I want to compare the 3 wavelength fluorometer from these 2 locations, from subsurface mooring B and subsurface mooring A. So now I have 2 time series data sets in my data view. I can either click on the data view from the Manage Data Views menu, or I can go up to the top and you can see that now I have a link to Fall AGU Demo in data views. So now these 2 data sets appear in my data view. So there on the right side, there's a map on the left that's a little bit too far zoomed in, but you can see that this is Global Station Papa. And from here, I can add these to a comparison chart. So in the upper right, there's this little plus button. I can say add to compare chart, and now it appears on the right side. I can do the same thing for the next one down. I actually can't see the button because of my, there we go. So I can either hit this add to compare chart, or if using the blue star, I can use that little add to compare chart checkbox. That's kind of the 2 ways to do it. And now I have a nice compare chart. I can zoom in and I can rebin data individually. So let's say I'm going to zoom in on this particular time period, and I can hover to get a comparison of what's going on at each particular time period. I can control the selected time bin for each time series in the compare chart individually. So I could be looking at hourly data versus all data. So you can see that the green one became a little bit coarser when I did that. I can give it a description by clicking on the gear. So here you can see the label that I gave this. I can change this label right here. I'll call it edited. And then So earlier we looked at a data view that had an animated GIF at the top of some that had been provided to us. And this is where you could embed that kind of thing. So if I hit update, then I get my updated title and my description. I can also annotate each item, clicking on the edit chart description button. I'm over on the right side now. And then I can say this time series. I don't have anything particular to say about this, but then I get a description underneath the chart or between the chart label and the chart itself. And I can reorder these. So I can make this one be at the top by clicking the up button. If I want to share this with somebody, I can click on the share link and I can copy this out. And then if I send this to somebody else, they will get the exact same data view. Some other things I can do, sort of
Brian?
General housekeeping. Yeah.
So if you're sharing with a collaborator, can he or she then alter the data view and you can work together?
He or she would need to alter the data view on their own and send back the revised version. You
Okay.
can't work on the same data view at the same time.
Thank you.
So if I were to send it to you, you could make some changes, but you would need to create a new share link and send it back to me.
Mm-hmm.
Some other things I can do under settings, I can select, these are there's the default base layer, default time period, color palette, and then I can, this is sort of probably the most useful for OOI, I can change my units. So we've set the default to metric, but you can also use English units. And then you can go to the unit manager, which gives you full control over all units. Oops. And then the feedback button, this basically sends a share link to the data team. So you can add a note here and you can say, this is confusing, whatever note you want to send to us about the page you're looking at. So it will send us a link to the exact thing that you're looking at. And if you include your name and email address, then we can get back to you with a response. There's also this help button here. So this goes off to documentation. Again, this is available on any of the pages, and you can dive in as far as you want here. So if we go to data views, look at comparison charts, as I dive in, and this is showing you how to add something to a data view. As I start to move in, you can see that you get these animated GIFs that actually show you how to do things within the site. Okay, I think that's all I've got for now. I would love to answer questions, or if there's anything in particular you want to see, I can walk through that.
Does anyone have any questions? Feel free, I've unmuted you so you can direct them directly to Brian.
I've got a question, but I'm certainly willing to let somebody else ask.
Go for it,
Okay.
John.
Brian, suppose I'm interested in temperature, salinity, and pH from all surface buoys. Can you show how I would do that?
Sure. Okay, so there's under access array data. So since you're interested in things across the whole system, you don't necessarily want to choose a location. At the bottom here, there's an advanced all data in a searchable interface. I can click on that. And this, I had some pre-selected search terms, so I'm just going to clear those out. So right now, this is a list of all the data in the system, which isn't that useful. But you said you were interested in surface buoys. So I would choose near surface platforms. And then from there, I can go into parameters. And I think you said salinity was one of them. So at this point, I'm starting to get a list. So now I've got all near surface platform salinity data streams. This is still a lot, but this is a little bit more manageable. I can scroll and look at everything. And then I can start to pick these off and put them in a data view. I can look, I can zoom in and see actual data from each of these or download. And then I think from here, I would just say, then choose the next thing that you're interested in. If you wanted to compare across parameters, then you would need to create a data view. Do you have a particular comparison in mind that you wanted to make?
Comparison between platforms? No, I really don't have a comparison in mind. I was just more interested in availability of those three
Yeah.
data sets.
Okay, and that's actually a good point. So one thing we didn't look at was inventory. Anytime you're looking at data, you can click on the inventory tab. The default is to look at an actual time series. But if you click on inventory, you can see actual availability. And so the green bars, that indicates that with some quality control has been done, and the height of the bar indicates how many measurements have been made. So if I just want to find where data is available, this would be a good way to do it. And I can zoom using the time slider.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Hearing none, Brian, I've seen this demonstration a few times now. Every time you do it, I get more impressed by how much one can use the data, see the data and really dig deep. So thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you, Brian.
thank you.
That was great.
Great. So we'll sign off and I'll make this available online as well for those who missed it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Good to see you.
You too. Bye.
Take care.